Hello and welcome. We start with Sudan. The possibility of a ceasefire in the war-torn African nation seems to have dimmed further, as its de facto ruler has threatened to keep the fighting on. He has ruled out participation in the peace talks. Vowing to fight for 100 years, the Sudanese Army Chief, General Abdel Fattah Al-Burhan, has said the army would not join peace talks with rival paramilitary rapid support forces or the RSF in Switzerland. He has dismissed all possibilities for negotiations with the RSF leader Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo.
We don't undermine the rights of the Sudanese people. We will keep fighting for 50 and 100 years. Unless this militia is destroyed and we liberate every inch they have desecrated, this war will not end.
The United States, along with Saudi Arabia and Switzerland, launched Sudan peace talks in Geneva on the 14th of August. The African Union, Egypt, the UAE and the United Nations also attended the talks that aimed at securing a much-needed humanitarian ceasefire in Sudan. Among the warring parties, only the RSF showed up in Geneva. The Sudanese armed forces boycotted the peace talks, citing disappointment with the format. The army accused the organizers of the talks of attempting to legitimize the RSF and sideline civilian leadership. It also objected to the UAE's participation in the talks, accusing the Arab nation of providing weapons to the RSF. The UAE has denied the allegations. However, Sudan's army was in telephonic contact with the mediators during the 10-day-long peace talks. Geneva peace talks wrapped up on Friday without a ceasefire deal. But there was some progress regarding the aid access on two key routes into the country. The mediators have secured guarantees from both parties to provide safe and unhindered humanitarian access through the Adra border crossing in Darfur and the Daba Road, with access through the north and west from Port Sudan. The mediators said they were also making progress on opening an access route through the Sennar Junction in the southeast. However, they acknowledged that the progress is limited and it falls far short of the response needed for one of the world's worst humanitarian crises.
We need those leaders inside Sudan, and we need those in the international community to understand that every hour is an opportunity to save lives. Every hour is an opportunity to get more food and medicine across. And as we speak, decisions will be made about whether the 15 or so trucks that crossed the Adre are the beginning of hundreds or yet another loss of hope.
The 16-month-old civil war in Sudan has killed over 16,000 people, while over 10 million people have been uprooted from their homes. More than 25 million across Sudan, or more than half of its population, face acute hunger. United Nations says the country is now at breaking point with a severe lack of shelter, food and water. Now for more, we have with us Moses Crispus Okello. He is a senior researcher for the Horn of Africa Security Program at the Institute for Security Studies. He joins us live from Nairobi. Thank you for being with us on Firstpost Africa.
Thanks for having me, Alyson.
Right. Sudan's de facto ruler, the Army Chief Al-Burhan, said that his government would not join the peace talks with the rival RSF in Switzerland, vowing instead to fight for 100 years. What are your thoughts on his statement?
Thanks once again, Alyson. I mean, the pronouncements by General Al-Burhan are not surprising. As you just mentioned a few days ago, he claimed that they will be fighting to the end, 100 years or more. But his position, from what we know, is not necessarily different from that of the different fighting forces in Sudan, including the RSF. For the simple reason that these different factions in Sudan have harbored for a very long time great animosity against each other for all number of reasons, including Burhan's claim that the RSF is a traitor force on the one hand, and RSF's belief that they cannot have a Sudan, a post-conflict Sudan that involves the South. So these are basically positions that the different factions have held. All of them are sort of anchored down in their different positions. So we do not necessarily believe that Burhan's statement is new or unique to this conflict. Over to you, Alyson.
The talks wrapped up on Friday. Right. Now, the talks wrapped up on Friday without a ceasefire deal, but there was progress on securing aid access to help with one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. How much will this help in easing the humanitarian suffering in Sudan?
Alyson, you said it yourself, a population of 50 million, half of which is undergoing severe humanitarian crisis. 13 also tracks accounting for nearly 15,000 people is not going to do anything to the 25 million. So this is more or less a drop in the ocean, if you will. So what needs to be done to address the severe humanitarian requirements in Sudan is to open up a variety of humanitarian corridors, from the north, south, west, and even from the east itself, where Al-Burhan is hauled up. So this is a small drop. It's better than nothing, but certainly not anywhere close to what is required.
Right. And we know that the Sudanese armed forces were unhappy with the format and they didn't attend the talks. The RSF delegation, of course, showing up in Switzerland. Take us through the details of the RSF being present at the talks and what they got across there.
I would see this as something of a diplomatic game that is being played between the RSF and the Sudanese armed forces. It is not surprising that the Sudanese armed forces did not show up in Geneva. They had indicated as much. It wouldn't also be the first time they snub a peace negotiation. I think they first did this sometime back in January with respect to a summit called by the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, the regional peace body within the Horn of Africa. So this current decision is not new. It's a continuation of what the army has been doing, what Burhan has been doing. But that is not to mean that the RSF showing up in Geneva is an indicator of a genuine desire to negotiate. It's merely an opportunity, a diplomatic opportunity to once again show that the army is not interested in negotiations. As you mentioned earlier, both factions are dug in, mostly scoring points using whatever opportunity avails itself. Right.
Yeah. And Moses, finally, what can the external actors, such as the neighboring countries, the international organizations, and countries like the United States and Saudi Arabia do now in terms of trying to find a resolution to this conflict?
It would appear that one of the biggest challenges with this conflict is the involvement of international actors from, across a broad range of them: Saudis, Emiratis, Americans, and what have you. I think the resolution of this conflict is a Sudanese matter. And to the best of our knowledge, there is some conversations going on among the Sudanese. And I think a few weeks ago, there was a meeting in Addis Ababa about trying to resolve this matter. So what needs to be done is for the different Sudanese factions to realize that war is not going to take them anywhere, and the only way to get out of the quagmire in which they find themselves is by talking. And only once the Sudanese have, ironed out or at least laid out their issues, would you then have to address the other secondary issues involving other international actors. Obviously, talks of this nature require resources. Perhaps this is where you could see the international angle, but otherwise the primary obligation, the primary duty here is for Sudanese themselves.
Moses, thank you very much for your valued insights and analysis into the latest out of Sudan.
Thank you, Alyson.
Climate change is on our doorstep. It's time for a revolution to take root. And it starts with 1.4 billion Indians. It starts with one tree for humanity, one tree for Mother Earth, one tree for our future. Project One Tree, a News 18 network initiative.
On the show today, the T20 World Cup bandwagon has moved across to the West Indies. What can we expect from this?
Hello, I'm Alyson coming to you from Durban, South Africa. Today we have a special show.
Start with a report on India's shifting nuclear posture. The first time since India officially became a nuclear power.
Hello and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Aaron Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C.